As you know, taqlid is an extremely important part of our religion, extremely important part of our juris system, of our fiqh, of our understanding of our halals and our harams. So inshallah today we want to talk a little bit about that. We want to discuss this topic and give it as much justice as we possibly can. As you probably all know, we are not fuqaha, okay? Not yet. So inshallah, for now we're going to give you as much as we possibly can. We're going to discuss it. So considering this is a panel discussion, that means also the floor is open to you guys. So if you have a question, something you don't understand, please raise your hands. Okay? And it's very simple. But to begin, Brother Ahmed will get us off the ball.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين وصلي وأسلم على أشرف الخلق والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين آمين. My dear respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Hopefully this won't be the only week we'll discuss taqlid, اجتهاد and الاجتهاد as well, because it's a very, very deep topic and it does require many nights probably to go into it. But perhaps as a introductory session, we can say that every action in Islam that we know falls under one of these two categories over here. If I say Islam, ad-Din, I'm sorry in English, you say Islam, okay? It's divided into two categories. Many of us have probably heard it, but for those who have heard it, we can refresh our memory. And for those who perhaps haven't heard it, maybe we may learn something new. Islam, how do they usually divide when you talk about the actions in Islam, or in terms of our beliefs in Islam? How do we divide it usually? Into what two categories?
Sunni and Shia.
Perhaps both, yes.
One day we'll get to that topic. Yes, brother.
There's halal, haram, makruh, mustahab and mubah.
Okay. That's, in terms of the actions, yeah. Maybe I should clarify the question. In terms of our, so to give it, let's say our outlook or our overview of Islam. If we were to divide Islam into two categories, where we say we have أصول أخباري خلاص أصول فروع طيب. I'm going to translate this in English. Fundamentals, we say?
And branches. Fundamentals and branches.
Fundamentals and the branches. I started a bit too late.
Yeah, you said you're going to write in English, but you're starting from the Arabic side.
Too late. Alright, so we have fundamentals and branches. Usul and furu'. Okay, this is the way we usually divide Islam. If you want to understand Islam, we look at these two categories over here. Everything in terms of our belief, in terms of our actions, falls into these two categories. Fundamentals, al-usul, also is divided into two. Who knows what they are? Maybe Ahmed? Usul al-Din?
usul al-madhab.
Madhab. Arabic.
Religion and madhab.
من أصول
Madhab.
madhab.
Yeah, school. Yeah.
Okay, to explain it, usul al-din, basically, if you believe in what this comprises, what makes up usul al-din, you become a Muslim. That's what makes you a Muslim. So what are these three? We can say Tawheed, oneness. everyone knows oneness, what's meant by that, yeah? That we believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, and there's no partner in worship. What's another component of usul al-din? Prophethood. So what?
Yeah. Do you want me to write for you?
So, prophethood, and the third? Mi'ad. Okay, so we say resurrection or the day of judgment. Okay, this is what makes you a Muslim. Resurrection, for sure. Usul al-madhab. Okay, so if you deny any of these three, you become kafir. You become you're non-Muslim. Okay. And usul al-madhab, or usul al-madhab, also has three. Sorry, two. Usul al-madhab has two components. What are those two? Justice. And perhaps we'll leave the discussion for justice and imamate for another day. But this is just to draw the picture in our minds so we can get into the topic of taqlid. If you believe in these two, you become mu'min, a believer. Okay? Without these two, the title of believer isn't given to you. Like, branches also is divided into two. When I say branches, al-furu' is referring to our actions, the way we interact, the way we do things in our daily life. We can say mu'amalat and the ibadat. Who would like to translate it?
Ibadat must mean like worship.
Okay, so worshipping and ibadat is to do with your, such as a song, for example, fasting, praying, zakat, khums, etc. Mu'amalat, how can we translate it? Our interactions, or our transactions, if you want to say as well, buying, selling, loaning, renting, etc.
Ibadat is the relationship between you and Allah.
Ahsan, yes.
Mu'amalat is relationship between you and the people.
Ahsan, ahsan. So when we say ibadat, it's your relationship with you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore there must be a niyyah with this as well. When we say ibadat, it has to have a niyyah, an intention. Whereas mu'amalat, it doesn't have that specific intention, qurbatan ila Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So mu'amalat is your interaction with yourself and other people as well. Alright. Now when it comes to taqlid and H.D.F, the topic of today, where does it fall under? Do we do taqlid, or should define properly taqlid first? Who wants to give it a go? Ahmed or Talib?
Taqlid basically means to follow, and some may add to follow blindly someone else, and whatever they say pretty much goes. So taqlid in the sense that we're discussing is following a particular person in religion, but I think Ahmed will explain in what parts of religion. Is that right?
So the question is, do we do, as he said, following in fundamentals?
No, because we all agree on those.
Because what?
We all agree on those. The scholars all agree on those, and we all agree on those. So there's no point following a particular scholar about those, because we all sort of agree on them.
In terms of agreeing, I would say the first part of the answer was 100% correct. No, we don't do taqlid in fundamentals. As for agreeing or disagreeing, within it, of course, there's many differences within the school of thought as well, in terms of theories and in terms of how it branches out into more complex, if you want to say, discussions. But the discourse for now, just whether we follow in fundamentals or in branches. Now, what I'll say is, you answered no, we don't follow in fundamentals. Why? Because that would be a taqlid al-madmoom. The taqlid that's not recommended or that's not expected from us. The taqlid that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about in the Quran, it says, don't follow your forefathers just because they were on a particular school or a particular religion or a particular way of thinking. Don't just follow them blindly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us this deen to wake up the mind. to make us think for ourselves, and to reach conclusions. In fact, the jurists, they say, the jurists meaning the fuqaha, or the scholars, they say that in terms of your fundamentals, not only that you can't, most of them say this, not only that you just must believe in them, but you must have come to a sound or reasonable conclusion. In other words, the conclusion must be from yourself. Not just because, why do you believe in Tawheed, the oneness of Allah? Because my marja said so. Or because my dad said so. That would be wrong. Or if I say, why do you believe in the Nubuwwat of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? You can't say because my family, or because my friends, or because anyone said so. No, they actually say that you have to follow with this taqleed. You have to reach a conclusion from your own reasoning. And it must at least be some sort of argument, and even if it's a simple argument. So they say, even for example, if I said, the world is moving, therefore there's a mover. That's a simple argument today we can use to say, therefore, the mover must be God, or there must be a mover for this universe. Or, for example, if I said, if I flip this over, then there's a cause and effect. So there must be a cause for the effect. Simple argument as such is enough for you to reach a conclusion. Now, when it comes to branches, this is the discussion. When we say taqleed, the word that you hear is referring to this topic over here, in terms of the branches. And perhaps to give a definition of taqleed, maybe, they usually give two definitions, or they explain it in two ways. Taqleed comes from the word, you can say qallada in Arabic, to follow. And the intent, or what they intend by this, or what they mean by this, is that you see an action and you replicate. So if somebody bought in a new jumper, for example, can you ask him, where did you buy that from? He said, I bought it from Fulan, this person down the road. So he goes down the road and he buys the same jumper. That is to do taqleed, to follow. But another more interesting, if you want to say, definition, taqleed comes from the word qilada in Arabic. Who knows what that means, where it comes from, that word?
Nicholas?
Necklace. I say, what's the relationship between a necklace and following? Well, they say that when you put a necklace on someone, or if you put a necklace on, you're putting it on his neck. And basically they're implying, or the relationship, the topic, your actions are being put on the neck of someone else. So if I, for example, followed Ali, okay, and I asked Ali, what's the hukum, or what's the verdict for this, and he tells me this is halal, or this is wajib. Therefore, if I act, I put my action on his neck, because on the day of judgment, he's responsible because he gave me that hukum, he gave me that verdict. He said it's halal, or he said it's haram. And the reason, if you want to say, why must we look for someone to follow? Is it kind of just perhaps come to my own conclusion? Why should I follow someone? Here it's a lengthy discussion, okay, but perhaps I'll give the opportunity for Ahmed or Khalid to have a say, so it doesn't just become a lecture.
Okay, so I'll just ask a question, and I want to see the response of everyone by raising hands. So if I were to ask the question, is taqleed wajib? Would you all raise your hands, or would you say no? So if I say taqleed is wajib, please raise your hand. Okay. And if you say taqleed is not wajib, put your hands up. Okay. what about this question? Taqleed is wajib for most people, but not for all people. True or false? True? Hands up for true? Okay, so a bit more of a unanimous answer. So I think what Ahmed is leading to, which I'll be taking over, if in fact you take out the book of Islamic law of any marja, this is the Islamic laws of Ayatollah al-Udma Sayyid Ali al-Sistani, Dam Dhillah. Now, Sayyid al-Sistani is one of the most popular maraja that are currently living. But regardless, this is just an example, and we don't want to talk about specific personalities necessarily. But if you go to the first pages, after the table of contents and after the forward, the first thing that it talks about, the first topic is taqleed. And it gives 3 options for everybody in this room. Every Shia has 3 options. One of them is taqleed. And then you have another 2 options. So maybe, Talib, do you want to help with as you were suggesting, if you want to run the board? Yeah. So everybody has 3 options. And some say that taqleed is the lowest option, or the least recommended option. The first option is that you become a mujtahid. A mujtahid. This particular translation of the Risala, it says to become a jurist yourself. Now, being a jurist yourself, somebody might come along and say, and buy from Spotlight some white material, and they wrap it in a certain way and they put it on their head and they say, I'm now a jurist and I can make up my own fatwas. That's not really what a mujtahid is. To become a mujtahid, you have to study a long time. And you'll see that after a certain period of time, the process you go through, and somebody gives you an ijazah or a license to make your own ijtihad, so you become a jurist, and therefore you no longer need to do taqleed, because you have reached a stage where you can derive law by yourself. That's the first option, and we'll talk about that a bit later. The second option is that he should, in this particular order, it says the next option is taqleed. He follows a particular jurist. It says, if he is not a mujtahid himself, he should follow one, i.e. he should act according to the verdicts of a mujtahid, or the one that they choose. So the first one is you become a jurist yourself. The second one is you follow someone who has become a jurist. And the third one is ihtiyat. Now ihtiyat, I think, Ahmed, you can correct me, but the translation would be something along the lines of precaution. Am I right? So what this means is, instead of becoming a mujtahid yourself, going to Qom or Najaf and studying for 10 years, 20 years, and instead of following someone that you think is most knowledgeable, in itself it's difficult to do. You think, it's too hard for me to find out who the most knowledgeable is, therefore I don't want to do that. The third option is you choose the safest option every single time. So what that means is, say you pick 5 scholars that you believe is amongst the most knowledgeable. You pick about 5, let's say. And then you find a particular law, for example, let's say drinking water. Okay? Drinking water, this is just an example, so this is not actually a law. Drinking water, 5 of them say it's halal to drink water, and 1 says it's haram to drink water. The precaution would be what? Who wants to tell me what the precautious measure would be? If I want to do ihtiyat, what would the precaution be? If 1 says it's haram and 4 say it's halal? Majority? Okay, so we've got 1 that says majority, and another says haram. So not the majority, but haram. Now, in terms of fiqh, what precautious means, it means you take the safest option regardless of numbers, of how many says what. So in this case it would mean, if I drink water and indeed it's haram, then I'm committing a sin. But if I don't drink water, aside from losing my life, but like I said, it's an example, if I don't drink water, then I don't lose anything. Okay, what is a really bad example? Let's just say Coca-Cola. Okay?
Say gelatin.
Okay, gelatin. That's a good example because that's a very applicable one. 4 of them say it's halal, 1 of them says it's haram. I take the precaution. I don't have to follow any particular scholar, but because 1 of them, regardless of who it is, says it's haram, I take that precaution, I take ihtiyat, and I don't eat gelatin at all. So these are the 3 options that we have. So some people that say taqleed is wajib for everybody, they're actually mistaken. Taqleed is not wajib. What's wajib is following 2 things. Who wants to tell me what those 2 things are? Hands up. Come on. Okay, I'll give you a hint. One of them is not necessarily sunnah. It is actually technically, but the Quran and Ahlul Bayt. Thank you. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Gosh, tough crowd, isn't it? Okay, alright, 2 bad example. So you have to follow 2 things. 1 is the Quran, and number 2 is the Ahlul Bayt. And what it means by Ahlul Bayt is, yes, technically it's right, it's the Sunnah of the Ahlul Bayt. Not just the Sunnah of Rasulullah, but the Sunnah of the infallibles. Okay? So those 2 things is wajib upon everybody. Everyone has to do that. What our purpose is, or what our aim or goal is in life, is to find the best way, just 1 second, just find the best way to do that. Find the best way to do that. Okay, yes.
Unless you know everything about those things, you have to do one of these 3 things anyway.
Correct. That's exactly my point.
Right. Implication, I'll let you.
Ahsant. So basically, what we all have to do is follow the Quran and the Sunnah. Now, what David has pointed out very rightly is, because you have to follow that, automatically it leads to one of those 3 things. Because if you become a mujtahid yourself, that means you've studied the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt and the Ahadith so well that you're able to derive the laws yourself. Or you don't have the time, you don't have the interest, you don't have the capacity to study them, so you say, you know what, I'm going to depend on somebody who believes he himself has studied it as enough, and I'll follow him, or I'll take the safest option every time, therefore I can't go wrong. So they're the 3 options. So
I just wanted to add just to that point Ahmed mentioned. Perhaps with a question I can add the point. Is it wajib to do taqleed or ihtiyat or become a mujtahid or ijtihad? Is it wajib to become, in all your actions, if we divide our actions, will all our actions either fall into taqleed, ihtiyat or ijtihad? Who would say yes? All our actions, would it fall into taqleed, ihtiyat or ijtihad? Would that be correct to say?
What do you mean by wajib?
Yani must you follow, taqleed by definition we said that you follow someone else. Are all our actions that we do, in terms of even religion, actions that we must follow or do ihtiyat or become mujtahideen? Who would say yes, who would say no? Or for those who said yes. Hesitant now maybe. Huh? Think yes. But you're not sure.
Maybe you can give an example to clarify the question.
If I give an example, probably
He'll give it away.
give it away. But I will anyway. Okay,
Yeah.
so basically, no, according to the scholars, there are a'mal, actions that are not under these categories, even from our worshipping. So for example, nobody comes up and says, I read in the Quran, واستنبطت حكم يعني حكما في القرآن, I came to deduce a verdict from the Quran that salat is wajib. Nobody says that. Or if somebody says that, he wouldn't be doing taqleed in that issue. He wouldn't be saying, for example, he's a mujtahid, I'm a mujtahid and I came to this verdict. Or if somebody says, I found out that pork is haram. He didn't have to do taqleed to reach that. He didn't have to become a mujtahid to do that. These are badihiyat. These are things that are very known or simple for the human being to acknowledge. So there are actions that do not fall under these. And it's not required for you to do taqleed. And nobody's expecting you to do taqleed in these issues. So these are the things that we, for example, Salat al-Subh has 2 rak'at. We know that. We don't necessarily have to do taqleed to someone for this. And just another side point, perhaps, maybe it's good to mention as well. This issue of taqleed and ijtihad and tahiyat, is it something that we derive or we understand this from the Shara or from our Islam? Does Islam, the Quran and the Sunnah tell us that we must do taqleed, ijtihad and ihtiyat or ihtiyat? Does the Shara tell us this? Did we have to go to the Quran and open it and it tells us to do this? No. This is something that we came to through our reasoning, and we acknowledge it through our reasoning, even though the hadith are prevalent in telling us that yes, we do taqleed and there is ijtihad, etc. But the main concept is that this is a conclusion that we've reached through reasoning. Now, someone may ask, is it reasonable, or what are the grounds of reasoning the concept of tawheed, to do tawheed? We say that in our everyday life we do taqleed, but we don't know it. For example, when you go to the doctor, and your doctor prescribes to you medicine, okay, and you've taken this from this doctor because he's a specialist in his field. You've taken it and you've accepted it as it is. You didn't stop to say, wait a minute, but I've got my own opinion in this, and I believe it should be this. You should prescribe me this medicine instead. Or perhaps, if you, for example, are looking for someone to fix your house, or a builder, let's say. If you call a builder and he gives you, let's say, a plan and he maps out your house, etc. In your position here, you take from what he's given you, or he's come to, let's say he's come to fix your house, okay? He's come with a solution. You've accepted that. You haven't really questioned it, especially if you're someone who's from the ignorant or who doesn't know. So you've accepted it. In other words, we do taqleed in our everyday life. In many aspects of our life, we do taqleed, whether we know it or not. But the question is here, how do we identify, if you want to say, the right person to do taqleed to? Perhaps this is where we should start to discuss it, because we're running out of time. But how do we start to identify the person that we do taqleed to? Because the concept of taqleed, what we're trying to get to it, they give it a term, is al-mu'ammin. You're trying to look for something on the day of judgment that you will feel guaranteed that you've secured yourself. You've secured yourself. This is the whole purpose of taqleed. When I want to do taqleed, let's say, as Ahmed said, I haven't reached ijtihad, because this is one of the ways. Reason tells me, if I want to know an answer for a mas'ala, or for an issue or a problem, either A, I go to it myself and I go study and I learn it, I learn how to deduce, and I come to the answer. Either B, I don't know the answer 100%, so I need to go for someone who's a specialist and follow his opinion in it. Or either C, that I can actually look at what the opinions are and take the most precautionary options. Okay, so what are the conditions? And I'd rather use the word probably conditions, not necessarily conditions, because if I say conditions, it means they all must be fulfilled to become a mujtahid. Criteria is probably, because there's ikhtilaf in this discussion as well. When it comes to these criteria, there's discussion on whether, for example, a'lamiyya is actual one of the conditions. Or for example, if al-hayy is necessary, like to be alive, must this mujtahid be alive? So there are discussions on this topic as well. But perhaps we can give the general criteria, if you want to say, and just say these are the criteria for how we identify a mujtahid.
I just want to add one more thing. It's really important actually that we attempt to come to a conclusion of who we believe is most knowledgeable. And I'll tell you why. Because out of those 3 options, 2 of them are near impossible. One of them is very simple, which is taqleed. Mujtahid, to become a mujtahid, regardless of how hard it is to get actually that level of ijtihad, during that time that you're studying and attempting to get it, you're going to have to take one of the other two options. Okay? And at the moment in this room, I don't think any of us are close to that level, except maybe Ahmed Shawri's on his way. Inshallah, we'll have our first Ayatollah in Melbourne, inshallah. Pray that it happens. I'll be the first to do taqleed of you.
If I could just add just to something you said that's important as well. Why it's necessary for us to reach a conclusion ourselves on al-a'lamiyya. We're going to go into how do you reach the most knowledgeable. But just before that, before we jump to that topic, something came to mind. We said ihtiyat, and perhaps we should not encourage ihtiyat. The reason why I should say this, ihtiyat is very, very complicated, and the reason is it requires a lot of background knowledge for you to do ihtiyat. In other words, let's say for example, this is what happens in many cases. Someone wants to do ihtiyat, take the best option. Let's say in the time of Eid has come. He's not sure whether it is Eid or whether it's Ramadan. So he thinks he's doing ihtiyat. Now what we would say ihtiyat was precaution. So what he does is, he leaves, for example, after Fajr, after morning prayers, to travel. So he can become a musafir. But not knowing that that's incorrect. He's trying to do ihtiyat. He's trying to stay away from, he doesn't want to fast that day because it could be Eid. And he doesn't want to break his fast because it could be Ramadan. So he tries to travel. So what he does is, he travels after Fajr. But not knowing that the actual way to do ihtiyat in this mas'ala or in this issue is to leave before Fajr. And so what he actually done was put himself in a situation where he could have broken his fast, or he could have fasted on the day of Eid, which is incorrect. So to do ihtiyat, a lot of times it requires prerequisite knowledge of not just what's right and what's wrong, but the way to do the right and wrong. Okay? And one more thing as well. In some actions, you cannot do ihtiyat. Not many people have thought of this, but in some actions, you cannot do ihtiyat. For example, when it comes to Salat al-Jum'ah, okay, there's difference of opinion. We have around five or six different views, whether 5 views, I think, whether Salat al-Jum'ah, is it wajib? Even in the time of al-Ghaiba, is it wajib? Yani, do we have to go do Salat al-Jum'ah, Friday prayer? Or is it mustahab? Is it something that just recommended? Or is it something that is haram? Some have come forward and said it's actually haram to do Salat al-Jum'ah. Some have said that under certain circumstances and conditions, it can be held. Now, you can't say I'm going to do ihtiyati and choose which one. Why? Because if I choose to do Salat al-Jum'ah, it's put me in a category right now, I could be doing haram, because another mujtahid has said it's haram to do it. So in certain circumstances, you cannot do ihtiyat. Now, to the main topic, ijtihad, or to get into ijtihad, or al-a'lamiyya in ijtihad, in al-mujtahid. How do you know who's the most knowledgeable one? Perhaps can we write that as the first criteria? Yeah, you can write that down. But who can list them, or who can think of, there's about 8, maybe 7, 8, 9 different criteria we can mention. Who knows what the criteria is of knowing who the person is that we follow, al-mujtahid? How do we know this person is a mujtahid? For example, I can't just say, this person at this local mosque, mashallah, this local masjid, he's got so much knowledge, I can follow him. No. I need to look for the person who the criteria matches for him to be called a mujtahid. So who is the mujtahid? What's one of the criteria? We said the al-a'lamiyya, we discussed it probably. Just the most knowledgeable.
Can I just ask, when we say most knowledgeable, does that mean most knowledgeable in everything? The one that has the highest intellect? Is it the one, for example, who has most knowledge of usul al-din? Is he the one who is most knowledgeable in hadith? Is he the one that has memorized the whole Quran? Is it the one, for example, who knows how to derive law from the Quran and the hadith? Is it the one, for example, who gives the best speeches on YouTube?
I think the one who knows how to derive law.
Ahsan. Okay, so this is what is very important, what David said, or Dawood said. He pointed out that the most important thing in coming to a conclusion who's most knowledgeable is that he is able to derive the law as accurate as possible as what Allah, the Prophet and the Imams intended. This is the most important thing. Some people believe that the most knowledgeable is the one who has the most YouTube clips, or who knows how to debate the best, or, you know, for example, has its own TV station or something along those lines. That is not the most knowledgeable. And sometimes, you know, people will accuse certain maraja of being too quiet, for example. And that's something that is a negative thing, therefore he shouldn't be considered the most learned. So we should be discussing these things, but the most important thing to keep in mind when we're discussing finding out these things is who can derive the law the best from the sources.
So just to add to that, we're not looking in terms of criteria who has the most bachelor degrees or who has the most sciences and knowledge in different fields. No, even if that's a positive. Or even characteristics. This is very important. It's not that who I love or who I see is a beautiful speaker, or someone who's brave, for example, he can speak courageously. He's not, afraid to not to speak out. No. Sometimes the marja thinks and he believes and he sees his actual position is not to speak out. So we don't have that capacity to say whether he should be speaking out or not. Now, in terms of al-a'lami, or to know who is the most knowledgeable, okay, yes, they say these are the areas or the fields we need to look at to distinguish which marja is most knowledgeable in terms of usul, in terms of fiqh, in terms of even language, if you want to say Arabic, or for example, any field related to doing istinbat, to doing deduction from the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay? Any other field is not related, so we don't look at these as criteria.
Maybe we get the list down.
Okay, yeah.
So that way at least we can get a chance for
Okay, so al-a'lami is the first one, or one of them. Anyone know the second, or another one?
I don't.
Okay, he has to maturity. He has to. And what does it mean to reach maturity? Basically, he's reached puberty, which means generally or roughly it's around 15. But any signs of puberty is basically notion of puberty.
Isn't it that other knowledgeable people around this person agree that this is a masculine person?
Right, but that's how we identify. That's how we find it. Yeah, these are the conditions now, the criteria. But that's one of the ways we say that that's a knowledgeable person.
That's within the first point.
That's within the first point.
This is the criteria of H.D.F, by the way, guys.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Brother, I've been doing taqlid for 25 years. Never got to the most knowledgeable.
Yeah, good question. A lot of people.
He didn't ask this question. He hasn't asked the question.
I thought you said, how do we identify the most knowledgeable?
Never got to the most knowledgeable. I don't think this is applicable on reality. It's only in theory. Because if you go to Iran, Lebanon, Iraq, Bahrain, everywhere, you will see people following different scholars. At the same time, like if you go to Iran now, you got Ayatollah Khamenei, you got how many scholars now, how many mujtahid in Iran now have printed their own risala. How many? And there's millions of people following each of them, regardless of even there's a prominent one who's dominant in the media or dominant in the like in the study field.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, there's people following different marajia, different mujtahids. So this is only in theory. In reality, it's not applicable.
Right. The idea when we say the most knowledgeable really means who you're most content with. That's what it really means. In other words, there are some maraja who have said that even if you say 3 or 4, you've got 3 or 4, these are the ones, one of them's teaching in the Hawza, one of them Shia, يعني they say another condition, another way, is that it's commonly talked about from Ahl al-Ikhtisas, or the people who know, that this person is knowledgeable. So you have 4, let's say. Some Maraja have said that from those 4, if you can't come to yourself, can't come to distinguish who's most knowledgeable, then it's fine for you. For example, Shaykh Fayyad, he says, he says that it's fine for you to take any of these 4. Even if it's even a potential, if you want to say. If you want to say. It's not even that you come to reach, he's definitely most knowledgeable. Even if it's potential. So some have said no, that you need to, just because somebody will ask the question, how do you identify the most knowledgeable? I would return the question and ask, how did you find the mujtahid? Because that's the same process we take to find al-a'lamiyyah. And al-a'lamiyyah is discovered through the same process that we take in discovering al-mujtahid.
I disagree, actually.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. How come?
Okay, because it's possible now to say who holds a bachelor degree or master degree or PhD.
Yeah.
It's easy to identify those people. That's mujtahid.
Right.
That's how we become mujtahid. But it will become very difficult. It's almost impossible to find out who is the most knowledgeable between these PhD holders.
Can I give an example, perhaps? When you get to the doctor, you identify him as a doctor. No one says, you know, are you a doctor, for example, to identify he's a doctor. You went to a doctor, you said, he's a doctor. How do you know? And I saw the way he deals, and I know how I know he's a doctor. He's recognized as a doctor. Now, if I ask you, which doctor is better, this one or the one in this area, or the one that you've seen this doctor before, the way he works, who do you feel is better? So this one definitely is more better. This one, he's got more recognition, if you want to say, in terms of the way he deals. I've seen the way he deals. When he done the procedures, or when he fulfilled his tasks, I saw from him more competency. I feel more
in one area. This is maybe he's very knowledgeable, very professional, very talented in one area.
Yeah.
You cannot compare him to another scholar in different area.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, is this process a subjective one or an objective one?
It's subjective, very subjective.
Which means there is no single.
No, only Allah SWT has knowledge of the khayr, who knows.
Can we possibly give an example? Maybe.
So according to you, this person is the most knowledgeable?
According to you, you feel content. You feel content. To somebody else, yes, he feels content.
Alright.
Absolutely.
And then that's fine. If it's subjective,
Yeah.
and then that's fine. So everyone can choose
Yes.
anyone who they feel they're comfortable with.
Yes. But what I was trying to get to is that it's subjective. You want to say contentness within yourself. It doesn't matter how they give an example. They go. This is one of the actual ways of cancelling out al-alami, if you want to say. If I've got 2 just, as the sister mentioned before, people who know that, let's say, or who Ahl al-Ikhtisas, or someone who knows a little bit about H.D.F, okay? For example, maybe he's finished Bahth al-Kharij, for example. He studied, his final studies in al-Hawza, and he's now capable. He's a just person, which is another quality, if you want to put, just. Okay. Justice is also another criteria of the mujtahid. But let's say another just person comes, and he says to you, I believe you should follow X marja. And then another one says, I believe you should follow that same marja. And then another 2 came, and they said, no, you should follow this marja instead. Immediately that cancels out the a'lami of the other person. Because there's 2 now that says one, and another 2 that says that one. So now you're in a hayra, or you're in a dilemma right now. So you need to look more. If, for example, you get 20 people who are just, and they say this person is al-a'la, or for example, another sign they say, if he's, for example, teaching in the Hawza, and he's got thousands of people who are scholars around him, and hundreds, if you want to say, mujtahids around him, then that's a good sign that this person is al-a'lam as well. They use this as a criteria as well. That if there's many people who give that testimony, okay? But it doesn't mean in reality, this is subjective as I said, it doesn't mean in reality that this person is al-a'lam. No. It just means on the day of judgment you're secure, because it's all about hujjah, what's an evidence on you. On the day of judgment I'm secure that I took with what my reasoning said that this is the most knowledgeable person, and so I could take from him. But if I didn't come to that conclusion, think about the consequences of not following al-a'lam. If I don't take the a'lam's hujjah, or his verdicts, it's no longer hujjah on me, because there's somebody possibly more knowledgeable than him. I'm not content, satisfied that this person is most knowledgeable. So on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bring me forward and say, if you knew that there's someone more competent, capable of giving you verdicts from the Quran and the Sunnah, why didn't you go to him instead? And this is where the question comes, can you follow more than one mujtahid who is... Was that the question you asked?
No, we're going to ask another one first and then that one.
Okay.
The other one was, if you're very limited in your understanding of language, and so you only know a fraction of what any of them have said, and then you only know what a small number of them have said because it's been translated for you, can you ever be satisfied that the one that you're following is the most knowledgeable, knowing how limited your knowledge is?
So this, now we should look at the ways perhaps to discuss how to find al-a'lam. Okay, without a doubt, one of the hardest ways is to reach a stage where you're capable of saying, he's al-a'lam, yourself.
But
That's the hard.
But why we have to follow the most knowledgeable? Why?
Sorry?
Why?
Why must we follow the most knowledgeable? Okay,
What's
so
the reason behind that?
the reason, or the, as I said earlier, that if there's someone who's less knowledgeable and I'm taking from him, then on the day of judgment, my actions were in the hands of someone who I knew there was someone more knowledgeable than him. And I should have taken from Bab Awla, yani, if I'm a more... sorry?
More advanced.
Yeah, I should have taken from someone who's got more knowledge than me.
So if I don't like to put some words on your mouth, but you try to say that the most knowledgeable is always is the closest to the truth.
No.
Can I say that?
They're the most knowledgeable in deriving law from the Sunnah and the Quran. So the thing is the hujjah on the day of judgment comes. I chose the person who I believe is going to represent the teachings of Ahlul Bayt closer. And I'm not saying that it will be. You're absolutely right. He could be completely opposite.
Because I had like very conflicting example in my memory that two Najib from the 70s and 80s, they've been the most knowledgeable in their ages. The most knowledgeable. And you remember that in the 70s, not like now, everyone is known. Like when the Marja, for example, Ayatollah Sayyid Hakim in 70s, no one knows anyone else. He's the only one. In Afghanistan, in Bahrain, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Iran, everywhere. People following him. He was given a verdict, a particular verdict, in regard to the Christian and Jews. And then in the 80s, the most knowledgeable major scholar at that time was very close to him in terms of like dominance over the Shia world, was given an exactly opposite verdict in regard to the Christian and Jews. So where is the most knowledgeable criteria here fit to get the closest? Closest, following to the Ahlul Bayt's way of worship.
The criteria is your intention. So really, when you followed the first one, then when you followed the second one, what was your intention? So
the first one, you followed the first one because your intention is to be closer to Allah through what you thought is the right, it's the closest. And the beauty of it is when somebody come and change it, you are not changing. You are still your intention to be the closest. That's what Allah will take from you. Allah will take from you, what's your intention, where do you want to go? Those ulama, they want to get you there. And the beauty is when they change, it actually shows you that this religion is so interactive and it can bring you up. So this is usually, it's a good thing rather than a bad thing. And I think once we concentrate on our intention, everything will be very easy.
And yeah, I think that's part of it.
That's different to what I'm talking.
You're saying, I understand what you're saying. You're saying that the most knowledgeable might not be giving the correct verdict. And a practical example of that is one of the most knowledgeable, and in a short span of time difference, the most knowledgeable gave one verdict, and the most knowledgeable slightly after it gave a completely different verdict. And that's going to happen. Absolutely no doubt about it. That's going to happen. In fact, even if you have...
That's going to happen.
It will happen. And that's something that we can't avoid.
Ijtihad is اجتهاد, right? It's اجتهاد. Each one has their own اجتهاد.
But
I totally understand that.
Yeah.
I totally understand that. I'm not saying that everyone has to give the same verdict. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But to put the most knowledgeable, to give the most knowledgeable an excuse to follow him, because there will be like, let's say for example, Ayatollah Sistani, everyone says he's the most knowledgeable now.
Yeah.
Okay? And everyone should follow him. Because he's the closest.
Yes.
But when the closest come next time, and they say give different verdict to him.
But what's the issue with that? What I mean, from our perspective, in terms of salvation, there's not going to be any issue with it, and because as you said, you agreed with Hajj al-Ansari about that.
Of course.
But what you're saying is the most knowledgeable might not give a correct verdict, and I absolutely agree with you. And for us to be able to know what the correct verdict is, we won't know until we reach a level of ijtihad.
I think subjectivity is very good
Yeah.
word.
Well,
in
It is very subjective.
Let's say you had for example, Ahmad has given an example before about, say you know that there's these 5 scholars and they're possibly one of them is the most knowledgeable, and you know this through the other mujtahids who are other. So let's say you have 4 or 5 builders, okay? Let's pretend that our maraja are builders, okay? Thank you. Let's pretend our maraja are builders, okay? And let's say the mujtahids that are under the maraja, let's say they're tradesmen. Now you want to build a house, your house of iman, your house of akhirah, or whatever it is. Now you know that these 4 or 5 builders are the best builders. You speak to the tradesmen and they say, look, I recommend you go with this builder, I go with that builder. All of them are going to build your house, but it's a matter of your contentment and your intention with the one that you choose. At the end of the day, it's your contentment. Is my house going to be built best with this guy? I don't know, these 4 or 5 are the best of the best, masalan. So maybe we can, that could be an example.
Perhaps if I just try to draw it out, imagine, let's say the only 2 fields is fiqh and usul, yeah? These are the 2 that determine the most knowledgeable. Then in fact there is actual a verdict that if you feel, let's say there's 2, you're choosing between 2. I'm not going to mention names, but let's say we put 2. And they're equal. Let's say they're equal. That means if you feel that he's got, let's say one of them has usul and another one has fiqh, therefore you can actually take from this, in this position, any choice from here. It doesn't matter who you take, because there's 2.
There's a difference of opinion about that, by the way.
Yeah. Alright. But just to say, I'm giving an example, just to say, to distinguish between 2, okay? To say which is a'lam and which is not a'lam. As I said earlier as well, even if there's 4 or 5 and they're all in that same category, it's not really a matter of how much you can specify and say, he has more knowledge in this, therefore he's greater than that person, or he will have better conclusions than that person. As Ahmed said, it's a matter of you. It's a matter of you feeling secure that you've taken at least a choice on the day of judgment that this person, his verdict, will be a representation of the person who was a representation of the Quran and the Sunnah in representing the Ahlul Bayt or in representing the Imam of our time. Thank you.
I think we'll wrap it up now.
There was just a sister, she had a hand up a few times. Do you have a point to make?
I just wanted to ask, do they have to be from the lineage of the Prophet to be a Muslim?
Sayyid.
Well,
We have. We'll finish that list just to
finish the list.
He has to be sane as well.
Okay, so we'll finish the list off, and then guys, we'll continue this discussion next week. And
This is not the last week that we talk about taqlid, so join us in the next episode on discussing taqlid with Ahmed Shawari.
Are you going to answer the question that you raised before? Can you follow more than one?
Yeah, we will. We're going to talk about a few things. Can we follow more than one at the same time? Can you follow a dead marja? Can you
for example, if can you change taqlid? What happens if your marja dies? We're going to discuss inshallah all those things, so it might take a couple of weeks. We'll finish the list next week, inshallah.
The list, guys, we'll finish the list next week. We're going to have your attention just for a couple of minutes. We know the program dragged out a little bit, but it's okay. We started about 10-15 minutes late, so it's still within 2 hours. This discussion, as you can see, is extremely important. Extremely important. So these things are things that need to be discussed, because I'm sure we all go home and we think about these things sometimes. Oh, what's the most knowledgeable? Am I doing the right thing? So inshallah, we'll continue this discussion next week and the week after, however long it takes. But inshallah, so we can come to some conclusion, and so we can have a better understanding of H.D.F, Mujtahid, and Marja'iyah. So inshallah, please, those who attended this week, please attend next week and tell your family and friends. And thank you very much for attending. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وعلى الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.